Welcome to another episode of Wellness Bites with Gauri. Hi, I'm Gauri Janarkar. I'm a founder of Ayurnutrition and holistic and integrative wellness practice here in Dallas, Fort Worth. And in today's episode, I'm really excited to have a wonderful and a very special guest, Dr. Vaidya Manjiri Nadkarni. She's not only an MD in Ayurveda, but also she's a registered holistic nutritionist. And I'm really very excited to talk a lot more about and dig deeper into some of her expertise today. So welcome Dr. Manjiri Nadkarni today to our Wellness Bites with Gauri. And we are going to dive a little more deeper into hormones and things today. So Manjiri, tell us a little more about yourself and what makes Manjiri unique.
That's a very interesting question. First of all, thank you so much for having me here. And it is an honor, to be on this platform with you. So what makes Manjiri unique is, I try to simplify things. For me, I was very complicated, I think growing up and um, I would like complex things. But right now, since I came to Canada, one of my biggest missions is to bring Ayurveda to everyone.
Mhm.
And a lot of the people that I work with, a lot of my clientele is, I live in a small town called Sarnia. It's a city of now about 90,000 population, but people were not familiar with Ayurveda. And people think that Ayurveda is something extreme. They have to change their diet or start chanting. So one of the things is, I bust all those myths and I tweak Ayurveda in a way that everybody can implement it without having to undergo drastic changes in your lifestyle. So I think this is what makes me unique. And as per Ayurveda, everybody is unique already. So I don't really need to, find more reasons. But yeah, I love what I do. I'm super passionate. I'm really passionate about hormones, the topic we're going to discuss today, because my own journey with Ayurveda started with um, of being a patient or being a teenager who was massively overweight and who had hormonal issues which were not diagnosed at all until I found an Ayurvedic Vaidya who helped me lose over 30 pounds of weight, who
Mm.
completely transformed my life. And I was also an angry young child. So, from being an angry young child and an angry young teenager, I suddenly became this calm Zen person, implementing Ayurveda. So, I think that's my story also is something that makes me unique and very blessed to have experienced Ayurveda firsthand before, you know, getting into the trainings. Yeah.
So wonderful, Manjari. It's really nice to know, that you simplify a lot of these concepts because that's one of the things I've heard a lot with a lot of my clients as well. When they say when they think about Ayurveda, it's more complicated and there's a lot of rules and things to follow. So which is nice to hear that you simplify things for a lot of your clients and make it easy into biteable bits where they can it's easy for them to use and things. Okay. So one of the things that comes to my mind, Manjri, since we're going to talk more about the hormones and things, is what happens when our hormones are imbalanced, and what is the impact on our health?
So, for understanding hormonal imbalances, we first have to delve a little bit into what exactly hormones are, right? So, according to modern medicine, or modern physiology, hormones are chemicals that are secreted by your endocrine system and that send messages to different organs and tissues throughout the body. And once they're released in your bloodstream, they're going to travel to this target organ or tissue which has receptors that recognizes the hormone, and then they bring about change. So the changes could be growth, it could be metabolism, it could be helping with fertility, it could be sleep, right? So basically hormones maintain the entire mechanism of the body as well as the homeostasis. An example is our sleep wake cycles are also deeply tied to melatonin hormone which helps us sleep, and any disruption in that is going to give you insomnia. Fertility or even sexual maturation, women having a regular monthly cycle is also a function of hormones. And hormones not only have a physical impact on your body and the maturation of body cells, but they also have an emotional impact on your entire, being. And there are different hormones in the body. We talk about thyroid as a hormone, which is going to maintain your body temperature, maintain a good weight, there are stress hormones which are activated in the fight flight freeze cycle. So different hormones are going to carry on different functions of the body, and hormones being in balance is extremely crucial, because once they are disrupted, you can, create a lot of havoc in the body just because of the disrupted hormones. So it's extremely, extremely important to be able to balance it. And because they affect everything, they're going to affect your sleep, they're going to affect your mood, they're going to affect your weight, they're going to affect the levels of inflammation your body has. So disrupted hormones can pretty much create lots of harm in your body, and not just the body, but as I said, also the mind and emotions. So they can eventually create issues with your relationships as well. They can eventually create, issues in you kind of conceiving. So there are so many repercussions to having imbalanced hormones. And again, hormonal imbalances would depend on what kind of hormone we are talking about, because there are so many different ones. So each one is going to show different signs and symptoms.
Hmm. That is very interesting to know. The effect of hormones and with the imbalance, the impact on the health. So one of the questions also is that since hormones have an impact on the health, are there certain factors that would actually impact or that would cause the hormones to go out of balance?
If we don't maintain our daily routines in Ayurveda, we stress upon the Charya, we stress upon, maintaining a good diet, lifestyle, sleep. So there are simple factors that can have a huge impact on the hormone. And with Ayurveda, we talk about, three main pillars of health. So we talk about the diet, we talk about sleep, as well as we talk about energy. So managing these three are going to make sure your hormones are in balance. But if you have any issues related to your diet, if you suddenly start eating a lot of sugary foods, for example, you are going to start producing a lot more insulin. And, after a period of time, your insulin receptors on the cells get desensitized to massive amounts of insulin. And then you start developing something called diabetes, right? So that could be one function when it comes to diet. On the other hand, if you are not having enough nutrients in your diet, an example is, iodine, which is responsible for the for thyroid hormones, right? The function of thyroid hormones. If you don't have enough of that, or even if you're eating but you're not picking it up, so that is going to not make enough hormones, so you could suffer from the lack of it. Our sleep cycles are extremely important, because your body also detoxifies in the sleep cycle. So if you are staying up late at night, it could lead to imbalances in also your cortisol, which is your stress hormone, as well as female hormones too, right? So there are going to be different repercussions based on each and every hormone that you have to deal with in your body. And diet, having a well-rounded diet according to Ayurvedic principles that is specifically aligned with you. I see so many hormonal diets and hormonal detoxes in the market, which are like the flavor of season. Some diet suddenly becomes really popular and everybody does that, or everybody follows a certain detox protocol for hormones. But if you make sure you're having a well-rounded diet for your unique body type, if you maintain that you're sleeping well, and if you are being really protective about your energy as well, physical energy, mental energy, emotional energy, and investing it well, these three pillars of Ayurveda, if you follow them right, you can really balance your hormones. And if you um, work against these, or if you overdo certain things, or if you absolutely don't sleep or oversleep, that can disrupt everything for you.
So very interesting to know now how these different factors actually, would impact our hormones and how it can have them go out of balance. Now, since you have an expertise in Ayurveda as well, one of the question also is, does Ayurveda talk about hormones, and how would you actually correlate the hormones in Ayurvedic terms?
So the term hormones is not really used, in Ayurvedic medicine, because Ayurveda is like an ancient medicine over 5,000 years old. And I think the term hormones was derived somewhere in, I think, 1960s, or I'm kind of not sure about the time, but much later in, ages. So Ayurveda does not specifically talk about hormone as such, but Ayurveda talks about three core principles operating in your body. three bioenergies known as Vata dosh, Pitta dosh, and Kapha dosh. So these are three things that have to be balanced at all times. They have to be in harmony within the body. They have to be balanced in the body. So these doshas can be understood as the bioenergies, and Pitta is the fiery energy,
Mm,
which can be connected to hormones.
mm,
Now, Ayurveda also talks about Agni, which is the metabolic principle in your entire body.
mm,
And there are certain metabolic principles operating at different tissue levels. In Ayurveda, we talk about Saptadhatu, or 7 layers of tissues.
mm,
So the metabolic principles in each of the tissues that is receiving the hormones, or creating the changes within the body, can also be understood as Dhatvagni, which can be loosely correlated to the hormone. So Pitta, or the Agneya objects, which are fiery in nature, or
mm.
Dhatwagni. So these are some loosely linked terms to hormones according to Ayurvedic principles.
That is just really great. When you think about how Ayurveda has been talking about some of these terms, may not be the exact terms, but has been talking about the functions, and how they actually affect the function in the body and things, and how Ayurveda personalizes everything to your body type and your health and wellness and things. The other question also, since you're talking about Ayurveda, is how does Ayurveda actually help with the hormonal balance?
So this is a really good question, and the answer is really simple. The first thing that we always do as an Ayurvedic doctor is to look at the prakriti, or look at the natural dominance of doshas, or even though there is a dosha that can be dominant in your body, it is in harmony with the other doshas. That's the
Mm,
beauty of prakriti, right? We talk about vata, pitta, kapha, which are the bioenergies present in each and every one. And for example, I am a kapha pitta personality, dominant, but my kapha is going to stay in harmony with a natural dominance within the body without wreaking a havoc on the vata or the pitta, right? But when we talk about vikruti or any kind of imbalances, one dosha exceeds in quantity,
mm,
and then it starts affecting the other ones, right? And then it destroys the equilibrium, the
mm,
nice equilibrium in the body. So that is what it can destroy. And that is, maintaining that equilibrium is the first step to helping a person balance hormones with Ayurveda. I'll give you a very simple example. So uh, a woman who is dominant in that fiery energy or pitta that we talked about,
mm,
if she starts eating a diet which has a lot of spicy foods or sour fermented foods, which are really in today, or she has a lot of acidic foods because she
mm,
loves that spices and they give her a nice kick, so she starts indulging in what we call pitta aggravating food,
mm,
or she goes out, plays in the sun for a long time, or takes a sun bath, or does indulges in
mm,
hot tubs. you know this is all going to increase that agneya principle, that fiery principle of pitta in her blood, right, in her body, in her blood. And eventually that can also create excessive menstruation or menorrhagia, right,
mm,
where he is severely bleeding. Now that again can be looked at as an hormonal imbalance, because
mm,
your hormones are very important, especially for menstrual function, right? So if you do a blood test, you will see abnormalities in the estrogen progesterone ratios, and that will be again connected to the diet that she had, which she
mm,
shouldn't have had in the place. So the impact is, your uterus, where you're having severe bleeding, it's
mm,
caused by dietary changes. Another example could be, after the age of 50, for example, 40 or 50, your body starts moving towards the vata stage of life,
mm,
so we go towards a natural dominance where the wind factor or vata starts dominating our body. And if a woman is already vata dominant, she does not sleep well, right? And she's working late into the nights, that is going to aggravate the vata even more. And that's going to create a lot more dryness in the body. The mood swings are going to be pronounced. She's going to feel extreme fatigue. The hair is going to be very brittle, dry skin, splitting nails. So all these symptoms are going to be an impact from the vata imbalance that she has had
mm,
due to the diet. And there are so many more, examples I can talk about, like
mm,
not just women's health, but even in general, indulging in too much sugars is going
mm,
to, which is a sweet. kapha. Sweet is a kapha taste. So too much of this sweet taste is going to push your body to secrete more insulin. Any unused sugar in the body is deposited in the body as fat by this
Mm,
insulin, which is the sugar balancing hormone. And again, that is going to lead an increase in the fat tissue. So, if you stop the root cause from happening by following a diet that is really in tune with your prakriti,
mm,
uh, that is the first key to helping a person with Ayurveda balance their hormones. And then looking at your stress and emotional makeup as well. We only talk about the diet, but in Ayurveda, there is so much more complexities to the human being. You are looking at the emotions, you're looking at
mm,
how they're using their five senses as well. Are they totally attached to the sensory pleasures? Are they
mm,
totally attached to different taste where they're indulging too much in a certain taste? That can lead to imbalance as well. Watching too much TV can also create anxiety in people. Right now we've
mm,
seen that in COVID, right? So balancing the individual through a right diet, right lifestyle, adding some meditations, adding a good routine. So overall, revamping everything about a person without changing too many things is something we can all do.
mm. So that is really very interesting about, how that Ayurveda creates that balance, especially with the hormones and things, and the way you explain that, with Ayurveda, since everything is personalized, the diet also should be more personalized with our prakriti, and how diet becomes a lot of times the root cause, everything just boils down to our diet and lifestyle and things. Okay. So, other question that I have also, Manjari, is that are there any Ayurvedic foods that can help with hormone balance?
So again, in my opinion, rather than focusing on a specific food for hormonal balance or imbalance, you need to have an overall diet or overall good diet. So you have to also focus on your agni, that you are
Mm,
breaking the foods down that you're eating, and you're absorbing the nutrients that make the hormones, right? Because there are certain foods which are going to be good for balancing your stress. An example is root vegetables will provide a lot of stability. They will provide complex carbs, but they will also support, balance your excess
mm,
hormones like adrenaline. If somebody is really triggered, a vata type personality,
mm,
for them it will provide a lot of grounding. For
mm,
a pitta type personality, to bring about a hormonal balance, avoiding excess spicy foods, avoiding extremely sour foods, fermented foods, um, avoiding watching television which is like stimulating or making you
mm,
angry or irritable is going to be important. So rather than focusing on specific foods for hormonal balance, I
mm.
think you have to look at the entire picture.
That is a very good point. Definitely, Manji, and definitely agree with that. That the food should be balanced according to a person's prakriti, and there's not one particular food that you would just want to focus on. It's basically based on a person's prakriti, and again looking at the imbalance, and then looking at determining what foods actually would actually help to balance those foods at that point of time.
And sorry, one more point that I really like to add here is, whenever addressing food, ask yourself a question that, are you eating to feed your body or
Mm,
your emotions, or are you really eating to nourish? Right?
mm,
So if you are eating to nourish, you're also eating your, the food should be pleasing to all your five senses and
mm,
also your palate. So good food need not be dietary food, or a food that is really good for you need not be told by somebody else, that okay, have this many amount of greens, or it looks healthy but you absolutely hate it, is not going to
mm,
work for you, right? So you have to, like, the food has to nourish you, nourish your entire being, including your emotions and your mind, and not just feed your body. Because I see two kinds of people in my practice: either
mm,
people who indulge too much and who look at food as a solution for their emotional overwhelm,
mm,
and then there are the other kind of people who are extremely healthy in the modern world or the modern concept of health. They don't have any conditions diagnosed, they work out maybe an hour every single day, but they look at food as just something that's going to feed myself. They don't look at it as nourishment, right?
mm,
So you have to change your perspective, and that will really help balance the hormones as well. Because Again, your emotions are also going to create changes within the hormones.
That is a wonderful point you pointed out, Manjiri. When you talked about especially how we look at food, are we looking at as nourishment? Are we looking at something just to feed our emotions, or are we eating just for our emotions? Are we eating our own emotions? So that is a wonderful point you definitely talked about, and that brings me to the next question, which is related to that: is does stress impact our hormones, and how does it actually impact our health?
So stress is something that is the next new pandemic that we were facing even before the COVID pandemic started, right? Every time we see clients in our practice, everybody is stressed, and stress is important. So decent amount of stress is going to push you into action. If you don't have a deadline, you're not going to
Mm,
complete the project, right? But if there's so much stress that you're paralyzed with anxiety, you can't even start the project because you're like, oh my God, I don't know how it's going to work out. Am I going to be able to do it? Then that is distress, right? So
mm,
any time you feel distressed, your body goes into this fight flight mode,
mm,
and either it wants to fight it out or run away. And this is something that's rooted in our days when we were hunter gatherers. So as soon as in the olden days we would see a tiger or a bear or an animal which would make us a prey, we
mm,
would suddenly have these hormones rush in, and they would make you run away as fast as you can, or they would draw all the blood to your extremities, and they would make you focus, and you would fight the animal and either kill it or die in the attempt, right?
mm,
Nowadays the response happens constantly. You are late to work, your computer isn't working, you missed a deadline, you missed a phone call, or your kids have to be ready for school and you're stressing about it, right?
mm,
So we live in a time where this stress response is continued from one thing to the other, and
mm,
that is going to create a lot of issues on the body. An example is adrenaline, which makes you that fight flight um, uh, ready, is
mm,
going to increase your heart rate, it's going to increase your blood pressure, it's going to boost your energy supplies by breaking the muscle down into sugar in your body,
mm,
right? Cortisol, again, primary hormone, that's what it does. And it also uses, like, it enhances your brain's use of glucose.
mm,
So what's going to happen when you're in this fight flight mode? It's going to take away from the rest and digest system, which is your normal for the body, right? So
mm,
stress system, of course we need it in emergencies, but we don't need it operating on a daily basis. The daily basis we need a system which is known as parasympathetic, which is a rest and digest system,
mm,
where you are digesting well, all the digestive juices are secreted well, your agni
mm,
functions optimally because of this rest digest system, and your body is not agitated or
mm,
irritated or angry. But as I mentioned before, if you're constantly feeling attacked, or if you're constantly feeling that you have to respond or be pushed to an extreme, this long term activation of the stress response and overexposure to cortisol and other stress hormones are going to disrupt all your body processes.
mm,
Eventually you end up with anxiety or depression or digestive problems. IBS,
mm,
very common thing today, irritable bowel syndrome.
mm,
But most of the cases or IBS can be connected to an extremely stressful period in their life.
mm,
That's when it started. Headaches, migraines, any kind of heart disease, sleep
mm,
problems, weight gain, hormonal imbalances where your estrogen, progesterone is off balance. You're not making
mm,
enough progesterone because you're making more cortisol, which is kind of helping your body just function and
mm,
maintain right now, maintain this stressful situation or just function in the stressful situation. Again, eventually it's going to lead to memory as well as concentration issues, cognitive impairment. So long term activation of the stress response is going to be really detrimental to your body.
mm.
And after a while, you start just feeling tired, extremely fatigued and extremely overwhelmed at every little thing. So
Mm.
these are some symptoms that can be seen.
Wonderfully explained, Manji. Absolutely great explanation. The stress impact and especially how it affects our health and especially how it's connected. When I look at it, it's basically like it becomes like a big cycle. It's not only connected to our digestive health, but it's overall health and things. And again, a lot of time there's weight gain and things associated with that and things. So see a lot of that. There's that stress impact. See a lot of that cycle coming in as well. Since we're talking about the hormones, one of the questions I wanted to ask is related to weight management as well. Is are there any Ayurvedic foods or Ayurvedic spices that can actually help with weight management?
So in Ayurveda, we look at the quality of foods as well. Like people focus on the quantity of foods in the modern
Mm,
world. It's either about calorie counting, so how much quantitative calories you have, or how many portions are you taking. But we have to focus on the quality of foods, especially when we're looking at weight management. The simplest example I can give you is if you look at a piece of steak, which is really dense and heavy, right?
mm,
And if you put it on a weighing scale, and for the same amount like of weight, maybe like 8 ounces, you're going to put vegetables or leafy greens, you're going to get tons of leafy greens in those 8 ounces, right? So
mm,
this is the simplest concept of understanding something that's heavy versus something that's light, right? So
mm,
if you eat a lot more lighter foods, they're also going to be easily digested without creating a lot of inflammation. And this is the very basic principle of how weight loss can work.
mm,
But weight loss is not as easy. It is way more complex than just eating salads or leafy greens. So one thing is you have to look at the quality of foods. You have to look at foods that are nourishing you rather than just eating something that's light. An example is um, too many salads. If you go on a
mm,
salad diet for 2 weeks, you are going to crave the nutrients because your body is not getting enough nutrients through them.
mm,
Definitely you'll get magnesium through your leafy greens, but you might not get any kind of iodine. So
mm,
now you start craving for different foods, and that shows up as intense cravings, right?
mm,
But on the other hand, if you have a balanced diet, that's really going to support your body. And for any kind of obesity, it is again important to have lighter foods, again in decent quantities, not overeat. But the key is also to add spices and improve
mm,
your agni or metabolic function in the body. Some simple herbs can be used are fenugreek. Fenugreek is one of my favorite. It
mm,
works in weight management. It increases pitta a little bit, but
mm,
it's really going to be, good for your body. You can soak a few seeds and chew them first thing in the morning.
mm,
You can add spices which are a little bit sharper,
mm,
so things like cinnamon or cloves can be added to your diet, and they're going to stimulate your body more. They're going to push your body to
mm,
create more digestive juices. Again, ginger is fantastic. um, Turmeric is another spice which really reduces inflammation. In obesity, we see low grade
mm,
inflammation throughout the body. So, turmeric as a spice is going to help with that as well.
mm. So great. I mean, really nice. You touched really well on, when it comes to different foods, and also Ayurvedic spices and how actually it can help with weight management. Now, one other thing, since you also touched upon inflammation as well, and we talked about stress and that, it can cause a lot of time the chronic inflammation in the body. Are there any Ayurvedic foods, especially for chronic inflammation?
So, as I mentioned, having turmeric is one of the best spices. Right now, when it comes to inflammation, because I've worked with a lot of food allergies, making sure that you're cutting out all the foods that you're either allergic, intolerant, or sensitive to. An example is, wheat is usually something that most people react to nowadays, not
Mm,
because it is bad, but because your digestive system cannot handle it. So,
mm,
taking that out of your diet is going to lower the inflammation. So, my first strategy always when it comes to inflammation is look at the root cause, look at the foods that are feeding inflammation specifically for you.
mm,
And when you take this out, we talk about it as Nidan Parivarjan, so stopping the very root cause of what's
Mm.
causing the issue, and that is going to lower the inflammation. And this is one of the simplest things I use in my practice. There are various tests available. You can do a blood test for food sensitivities, or you can do applied kinesiology, muscle testing for sensitivities. But
Mm.
it is about taking the food that you are specifically reacting to out of your diet. It could be whey or casein, which are the milk proteins.
Mm.
I often hear about people, going on lactose-free milk, but most people don't react to lactose as a sensitivity.
Mm.
It's more a deficiency of lactose, right?
Mm.
But a lot of children as well as adults I see in my practice do react to the proteins found in milk nowadays because of how it's been inflamed.
Mm.
Now, if you are okay with milk, if your body is fine with it, if you're drinking good quality organic milk, that is fine too. A kapha person is again going to need that
Mm.
um, ab- abstinence from milk, whereas a vata person is going to thrive on milk. So again,
Mm. Mm.
inflammation is again very a subjective thing when we look at
Mm.
different people, but taking the general inflammatory foods that you see today, avoiding any kind of preservatives, avoiding any kind of chemicals in the food, is going to be the very first step of lowering inflammation. And then you can add foods like rice or brown rice, for example, is hypoallergenic. Oats
Mm.
are not something that are very allergenic in nature, right, as
Mm.
compared to wheat. Or you can go for goat's milk, which is easily digestible alternative to cow
Mm.
milk and is also a little bit less allergenic than cow milk. So those are some simple tips that you can implement.
Mm. So that's wonderful, tips that you provided, Manjari, and you touched based on, especially with the inflammation, chronic inflammation, some of the foods and things we talked about as well. What are there any other wellness tips and things that you would like to share with our audience today?
Yeah, so one thing is, that I really love to tell people is to have regular check-ins with yourself, every single day, maybe at least 3 or 4 times a day. Try to check in with yourself and see how you're feeling. Are you hungry? How is your body functioning? Do you feel any aches or pains here or there? Are you having any digestive symptoms emotionally? Like, depending on what you're going through, if you're
Mm.
having a lot of emotional issues right now, maybe check in and see what's your anxiety level at, and
Mm.
what can you do? What is the one simple thing you can do to provide relief to yourself? And this is how you will start on your own wellness journey. We are talking about wellness bites with Gauri, so I hope everybody listening start on their wellness journey. But one of the keys is to check in with yourself. Unfortunately, we are so disconnected with ourselves.
Mm.
We look at hormones and then we track our symptoms back. So when you look at a test and your doctor says, okay, your hormones are out of balance, then you're like, oh yes, you were right, I was having this symptom. But rather than going backwards, why don't you get in touch with your body? Why don't you get in touch with your emotions? Because that is the way forward, and it's a very simple way.
Mm. So that's a great, great tip, Manjari, to talk about checking with yourself. Because a lot of times, we are not very mindful, especially when it comes to us, and especially understanding, those subtle cues that our body gives us and listening to our body. So that is a wonderful tip that you have provided about, checking with yourself and actually listening to our body. Since we're talking about wellness and things, so let's talk a little more about what is your personal health and wellness routine that you would like to share.
So my personal health and wellness routine is, I wake up and I do a 10-minute simple meditation. Sometimes, if I wake up with a big to-do list, I try not to get to the list till later in the day. Every morning, I'll just wake up with a simple meditation. It could be a 10-minute meditation where you sit down and try to meditate on your own, or you can use an app like Calm or Headspace. And that's my first thing. I usually pray in the morning, so a little short prayer as soon as I wake up, and just being grateful for, another chance at life, another day, which is so beautiful. And in the morning, I actually spend a lot of time with my plants. I have a lot of herbs growing in my home. So this is like my second walking meditation, as I'll go and check in with all my plants. And being an Ayurvedic doctor, I'm pretty intimately connected to my herbs. So I have ginger growing in my home right now. In Canada, it's minus 18 degrees outside, but I have turmeric, ginger, rosemary, and I'll go and connect with my plants. I'll just thank them for all the beauty that they do. And this is how I typically start my day.
That is so wonderful, Manjari, especially when you talked about, meditation, and, you talked about, you walk around, around with plants and things, so that is just great, great tips for, sharing your personal wellness journey as well. Okay. Do you want to share any update or any events that's coming up in your practice?
So for me, one of the things that I do is I do regular Facebook lives, and you can follow me at the rate Manjiri Ayurveda, where I am either interviewing different experts on Saturdays or Wednesdays. I'll have a wellness Wednesday where I talk about different topics and give you simple implementable tips. And if you need more information on me, you can also follow me on www.manjirinadkarni.com. I have a few things in the plan right now, but I'm not releasing those till the end of March. So yeah, but I have lots of goodies on my website, or even my YouTube channel. Dr. Manjiri Nadkarni has lots of information on different Ayurvedic herbs as well as protocols. So please join me there.
Okay, that's really great, Manjri. So if people want to seek out, to you for your expertise and your, consultation things, is there a, should they call you directly, or how should they contact you?
So you can email me at namaste@manjirinadkarni.com, and that's how you can email me. Or you just have to head to my website and you can find a contact form, which is really easy, and just fill it out and get in touch with me. Or just ping me on any of the social media places that I am, and I'll be more than happy to help you.
That is absolutely great, Manji. So it was wonderful, talking to you and discussing, especially, the hormones and hormone imbalance and things. We touched base a lot on, especially the Ayurvedic perspective, and that was really nice to know, through the Ayurveda perspective, what it means for the hormone imbalance. And we also talked about different foods and things, and you shared great tips. So thank you, Manji. Thank you so much for being on a podcast interview today, and I hope all of you also have gained, through Manjri's expertise as well. So keep listening to our Wellness Bites with Gauri. The podcast is available on our website, which is www.inutrition.com/podcast. It is also available on Apple Podcasts as well as Google Podcasts and things as well. So thank you so much. And it was always a pleasure to have you,
Thank
Manjari.
you so much. Thanks so much for having me.
Okay, thank you so much.